Welcome back to Talon 101, and this is the last Frametrap sample guide that I'm going to do. So this is advanced level or high level Frametraps, and at a higher level, these situations have lesser options. So if at intermediate level, you were kind of like going around as many options as possible to like keep your opponent in check, at an advanced level, you have lesser options to cover certain stuff, but it's still possible to use these situations properly. So let's go over the 4 advanced Frametraps that I have for you in this video. Alright, so the first one we need to talk about is RFS F4. They did something to this move. This is gonna get its own video, but for now, what you need to know is that this is now 0 on block and +2 on hit. That does a lot. Why does that do a lot? Because if the opponent does Rage Art, if they do RA on block, right? If they do RA on block, let's say you did it because you did it off like down back 4 into RFS2, or you did up 4 into RFS2, or 2-4 into RFS2, right? Tough luck, because you lose. There's nothing you can do. I labbed this situation as much as I could. For as long as you do RFS F4 on block, it's over. Like, there's nothing you can do. So if the opponent does have rage, the only time you do win with RFS F4 is that if they get hit by RFS F4. But the moment they do block RFS F4, well, it's pretty much a no-go. When my beam on hit, like, so if you do like, let's say down back 4, up 4, 2-4 on block, let's say that gets blocked, right? That sequence gets blocked, and then you do RFS F4, then RFS F4 on hit will always deny a Rage Art challenge. So the moment you do see it on block, you have to react first. Because if they're a little bit delayed in their reaction, so let's say it does connect, right? It connects first. That's the first thing you get. It connects first. And then it blocks. Go RFS2 as soon as you can. Like, seriously, go RFS2 as soon as you can. Try to remain as safe as possible. Because you do not want to be stuck in a Rage Art situation that you can't do anything. Like, you straight up cannot do anything at all. Yeah, so that's like the main thing you need to remember about RFS F4. Most especially if the opponent has rage. But okay, what if they're not in rage, right? What if they do a power crush? Well, you're fine for the most part. Because RFS F4 on hit will deny, again, a power crush or a rage art. It's like, you're fine. For as long as it's always on hit. But if it is on block, which is like the situation that matters the most, well, it's tough. So if you do just basically pull off the full string, you will trade. I mean, it's the most you can get in this situation. Although you can just go straight for a grab. You can just opt for like F2 +3 or RFS down 3 if the opponent does do a power crush. So it's like one default option you can do on block to like prevent it. But of course, if they do a Rage Art, it's game over. And if you want to like remain completely safe, RFS 2-1 usually against like a slower power crush. Like that, you're fine. But I guess like, against Alisa's up back 2, I guess you're not fine. So you're gonna have to like make that decision to like either go for a grab immediately or press the full string so that you do trade with some damage, or you go for the low and that'll counter hit and you get the free damage. The other thing for RFS F4 that you already know, well, if you don't know, right, just to be a refresher, right, is that this is the situation where you use your low crushing RFS mids to like beat a down jab. So if the opponent really just wants to stay in place and they don't want to risk their power crush, they don't want to risk their Rage Art or any other button that keeps them standing, because again they need to use a high crushing move to beat RFS F4 or a move with like high evasion, that's when you Flying Eagle every single time. And the last thing that I can't fully demonstrate here because I'd have to swap out the characters and I have other lessons to other Frametraps to demonstrate, it's just that know this, like if you do RFS F4 on block, all the opponent has to do is sidestep right into a duck, and that's going to avoid majority of like your options in right flamingo. Like, it's going to be really difficult to catch them here. And from what I remember, the only options that do catch are RFS F4 and RFS forward 3. Again, you can double check that in the lab, but off the top of my head, that's what I remember. That's which makes it a difficult situation if you do any right flamingo on block and you use RFS F4 and that goes on block, or you already have RFS F4 on block and then they sidestep right into a duck. Yeah, so that's pretty much the RFS F4 mix-up in a nutshell. Let's move on to the next one. The next one we need to talk about is, I guess, pretty straightforward. Don't really have to showcase any challenges or whatnot, because this is about RFF forward 3. So you already know RFF forward 3. This is hella plus. Like, look, on hit, that's like plus 23, plus 17. Like, what's the opponent gonna do there? They can't do nothing. And the same thing on block, this is plus 12. So let's bring up a challenge. So let's say they do a power crush, and you do like a fast mid. Well, they're not gonna win at all. It's the same thing if you do a low. You're good. And 16 frames seems to be like the threshold. So they don't do your 19 frame LFS forward 3. But I mean, you can do a lot of options here, basically. So like, what qualifies this as an advanced frame trap, since like all the options are pretty much good? I mean, what qualifies this as an advanced frame trap is that it's locked in stance. So like, you can only get RFF forward 3 if you were an RFF to begin with. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how do I get to place this in neutral? Most especially, both you and your opponent are playing a lot of small Tekken. Then at that point, you're just going like a lot of DF1s, 1-2s. You're doing your faster options like RFS F4 or DF3 to like keep really safe. So it's just like, when do you get the chance to RFF forward 3? So it's finding out those sequences and like finding ways to like just get this on block or on hit. Because the moment you do, you can really lay the pain down on the first mix-up if they press. But the thing is, your opponent would also know that it's like Giga Plus. So it's like, how do I use this situation on hit or on block to like push the game state in my favor? Because the second mix-up will like change a lot. So like, oh, now they're just gonna focus on the LFS1 mix-up, or like, oh, now they're just gonna focus on the LFS3 mix-up, or like the down 3-4 mix-up, and so on and so forth. So it's like, how do I use this to like push it further? Because it's like that one scenario where you get like guaranteed damage in that sense, or like a guaranteed mix-up. So that's what makes it tough to use RFF forward 3. Because again, locked in stance, it's high, your opponent knows it, it doesn't get a lot of opportunities to be used. So I mean, when you do get to use it, you have to use it in a way that will pretty much help you, instead of just like using the move to like get a mix-up, because at that point your opponent's really just gonna ignore the first move and then you're gonna block the second move. Next, let's talk about RFS down 4. This big low that replaced the Hell Sweep. That is plus 7 on force crouch. Naturally, if this does get blocked, you're dead. So let's not talk about the situation on block. Let's talk about the situation on hit. And the first thing that you need to know is that if the opponent does decide to use a power crush, you will win with 13 frames. So just going by the situations one by one. Again, if they do sidestep towards the right here after RFS DF4, RFS down 4 rather, RFS DF4 will catch them. And the other mid that will help is RFF 3. Now, if they do decide to sidestep towards the left, then at that point you can use RFF back 2. We're just going to switch sides so that it works. So again, RFF back 2 in action. And RFF back 3. Well, that's not a mid, it is a high. Because DF2 in this situation does hit against sidestep left. However, the moment you do swap this to sidewalk left, then at that point, this will not connect. So if you do want something to connect in this situation, and you weren't really thinking about which side they were really going for, you can just simply use F1 plus 2. Because F1 plus 2 is pretty much pseudo homing at this point in this situation. So go back to player 1 so that we can see sidestep right or sidewalk right, like so. Now if they do rage art, again 13 frames will win. But again, it's not going to register as a counter hit, so do watch out for that and just go for like a basic mid option. But again, their life is really low, so you could opt for like a slower move in 16 frames, or you can like just pretty much go all in and try to get the W with RFS down 3 or RFS 4. Last one we do need to talk about for it at a high level or an advanced level is RFS DF4. This is an axe kick that puts the opponent at plus 8 force crouch, and if they do block it, this is going to become plus 1. Now, plus 8, it's just like, oh, it's pretty straightforward from here. Like, I can just F1 plus 2, I can DF2, so on and so forth. Why is this at a advanced level? Well, it's an advanced level mainly because of like a couple of things. The first thing is that your opponent recovers in crouch. So when this move hits, highs pretty much are not connecting for the most part. So as you saw there, like the jab whiff, which is like if you want to like remain really safe. 4-3 surprisingly does hit back in Tekken 7. I do remember this whiffing. It's the same thing with back 4. I mean, yeah, the opponent is already crouching, so their first defensive option might not be to hold back. It could be to hold down back or down forward. So at that point, that's when your lows could potentially get low parried or blocked. So if you went for down 3-4 because you really wanted to like take advantage of the situation, you could put yourself in a really bad spot for doing that. It's the same thing with like down back 4 if you wanted to make it safer, and they were like just straight up low parrying. So using mids is like the only way to go, and you can't necessarily just JFSR, because if you attempt to JFSR and the opponent does decide to challenge you with a power crush, well, you lose. So for the most part, if you are against a power crush, of course you can use a grab, but mainly they use a 13 frame mid, so mainly DF1 to prevent them from doing so. And potentially 14 frames. Yep, 14 frames will win here as well. You can't use 15 against a power crush. You can only use 15 when they have rage on hit, and you'll get your free launch at that point. So yeah, like you're pretty much always going for your DF1. And then if they have rage, that's when you're like, oh, I may go for like DF2. Actually, you could also go for like F1+2 as well. That is an option. And it matters on like if they backdash or not. So they're not really going to be stepping at +8, right? But they can backdash. And if you do DF2, as you can see, it does whiff. So that's where F1+2 does come into play. But you will be putting yourself at -9 compared to -7. I mean, both putting you at a disadvantage. So that's when DF1, since it's not going to lose to the backdash there. But I mean, it's not as big of a reward. So it's like trying to find a way to like get your lows in, or to like use the safe mid and then use movement afterwards to take more advantage of the situation, since you can't go really +1. I guess if they backdash, you can go +1, but you have to consider if they're just crouching. So another thing you can do is just pretty much use movement, like delay your timing so that at that point they are standing, and like a JFSR can go in, a down 3-4, etc. Now, if this situation does happen on block, well, +1 is +1. It's like a jab on block. So there's a lot of things that can happen. A lot of the iffy frames from -3 to +3. So your first main default option is to like use 1-2. So like if the opponent does stay in place, you can pretty much loop it 1-2 into like a DF4 and so on and so forth, for as long as they don't challenge with like a power crush or a high crushing move. And then the other thing you can do is like use a throw, because your throw will now come out at 11 frames because you're getting +1. And the last thing you can do on block is to simply just use movement, whether that be backdashing in RFF, simple backdash, forward 3, or again forward neutral 4. Like you have a lot of options to like use here, but then you have to like really figure out how the opponent is doing their thing on defense so that you can further maximize this +1. So just to show an example, if they decide to power crush and you jab, you lose. Now again, this is a high power crush, right? So let's double check with a mid power crush. I did not jab there. We'll jab here in this instance, and you're fine. So against a high power crush, you're going to lose, but against a mid power crush, you're completely safe if you do a jab. Now, of course, if you do a throw, like both options will lose here. So that's great. But of course, if you do use movement to like avoid more challenges, not just the power crushes, like one sidewalk right, you're free. Or if not sidewalk right, I believe you can like step this towards the left. Not step this towards the left, so like SSL into a block, and you get a grab punish. It's really good. But again, at a higher level for these kind of frame traps or situations that are very similar to the 4 ones that I've showcased in this video, you really have to focus on like how your opponent is reacting in the situation and apply the option accordingly. And if they do have rage, take as much care as you can and like try to remain in left foot forward or right foot forward as much as possible. Again, that has been the Frametrap series for Tekken 8, updated for Tekken 8. I've been Frontier, and thank you for watching.